Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Franchise Show. And this, of course, is the show where you get under the hat of all things franchising. And it's a live show. Well, it's live if it's January 27th at about 5:15 for around 50 minutes. So because it's live, we love you to get involved. So say hello, pop in a comment, and get involved in our conversation. So what do? Each week on the Franchise Show, we take a new topic, we take a lovely guest. And today is absolutely no exception to that. We have a fantastic guest with us. But before I introduce you to him, let's tell you what the topic is. Today, we are going to be talking about why franchising is so difficult and hopefully how we can make it a bit easier and some of the other sides to that as well. Now, to talk about this fantastic subject, we have the lovely Ajmal Mushtaq from Boss Pizza. In fact, the boss of Boss Pizza. Ajmal, welcome to the Franchise Show.
Hi, Harvey. Thank you very much for having me on your live stream.
Oh, you're absolutely welcome, and it's fantastic to have you with us. So before we kind of get into the topic today, it'd be great to just, most people are going to know you, of course, but it'd be great to have a little introduction to yourself, to Boss Pizza, and how you've got into the wonderful, fantastic world of franchising.
Yep. Very quickly, I studied law at Glasgow Uni, worked in London for 10 years with a leading global management consultancy. Then I ran an Indian takeaway business, and I grew that to being the biggest takeaway kitchen in Britain. And then after 14 years, just after COVID hit, we had to supplement the income of that business. And we thought, why don't we start a pizza brand? So we started Boss Pizza. And then within about 6 months, we actually realized something. This operationally is very, very simple. So then we just expanded, put more effort into the Boss Pizza brand, sold everything else. And now the sole focus is on building the pizza brand nationwide. So we've started the journey. We're building slowly, but we're really enjoying the journey.
Fantastic, great introduction. And look, I think you're absolutely right. And if you said something there about keeping things simple, right? And you mentioned there that the business was operationally quite simple.
Yeah.
And I think, we're talking today about the topic of why is franchising so difficult. Now, of course, the opposite of difficult is simplicity, and making things easy. And why do you think, what was it that's made the operation simple? Why did you sort of state that? Is it because it's pizzas and that's a simple thing to make, or is it more what you put into the operations?
Two things. Number one, it is pizza. You put it in one side of the oven, it comes out the other side cooked. From a resourcing point of view, it's relatively straightforward to train up the staff compared to something like an Indian restaurant. That's a business I was in before, the Indian takeaway business. There you need a specialist rice chef, tandoori chef, curry chef. And for you to get upskilled in those skills, it can take sometimes 3, 4, 5 years to really master your craft. And I don't think businesses today have got that level of patience. And I don't think the resources stay around that long for each of the businesses. So operationally, the pizza business compared to running an Indian takeaway was much simpler. Now, the second part, very, very important. To move your operation to a point where it's actually very, very simple, it's actually quite a complex process. You need to almost engineer every single process in your business and simplify it as much as possible for maybe 1 year, 2 years, to the point where then it becomes very simple. And that's what I did in my previous business, and that's what I did in Boss Pizza as well. So simplicity is often quite a complex task to achieve and to master.
Yeah, I like that. It's complex to get things simple.
Yeah.
And I think you've absolutely nailed it. You're absolutely spot on there. It's much easier to overcomplicate something.
Yeah.
To make it more complicated than it should be.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to take a complex process and make that a simple, shorter, straightforward process, isn't it?
Yeah. So, for example, in my previous business, we output one meal every 15 seconds. And if you were to walk into the kitchen on a Saturday night and close your eyes, you would think there's no one in the kitchen. There was no chaos, there was no shouting, there's no need to raise a voice. Everything was just streamlined and systemized to the point it was so simple and effortless for absolutely everyone. So yeah, it does take a lot of effort to make things as simple as possible.
Absolutely. So when you sort of set out, what steps did you take at the beginning to kind of create that simplicity? Do you think that there are some good practices to follow, early on, to prevent yourself overcomplicating these things?
Yeah, so the big mistake a lot of people made that I've seen in the past is they jump straight into opening up a business or franchising something. We spent almost 3 years building the head office capability, the systems, the processes. We brought on the best solicitors, the best consultants in the industry to set up the foundation. So when the foundation is strong, then it's easy to build a business. So the last thing that I want is to open up 10, 20, 30 branches, the wheels come off and the whole thing implodes. I've seen that so many times in my life. So we're mitigating against that by investing the time up front, building a solid foundation.
I think it's like anything. If you don't get that strong foundation, and I think also having that clear vision or that clear goal as to where you're going with the business, and making that clear to everyone in the business where you're all heading. I think, does that resonate with you, that sort of vision, in terms of keeping things simple and not making things difficult?
Yeah, of course. Any business should have a very clear vision statement. And our vision statement is very simple. We want to be one of the leading pizza brands in the UK. Now, that's a long-term vision. That might take us 10, 15, 20 years, but that is a vision. And it's important that the entire team is behind that vision. And the big mistake a lot of businesses make, again, is their vision statement is often too complicated. It's got too much information in it, and it's not easy to implement that into the business in a way that everyone understands.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think if you spoke there a little bit about a vision statement as well. Yeah. I think sometimes values, vision statements, all of these things can often be something that is just written down on paper, or maybe it's a mural up on the wall somewhere. And you say to everyone, these are our values. This is our vision. But they don't make that leap to actually being part of your everyday business and what you do.
Yeah.
And you spoke first of all about your vision, long term as well. You're not talking about 18 months, you're talking about 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
Right? That's the last time I heard someone talk about that far ahead in a business, it was actually McDonald's. Right?
Oh gosh.
They were talking about 25 years ahead, which outstanded me. I couldn't believe that you would picture a business a quarter of a century ahead. Yeah. But I guess you have to. You have to make these decisions, because if you don't know where that long-term direction is,
exactly,
you don't know where you're going to go. So, what sort of values have you got in your business? What's important to you?
But before we go on to the values, let me talk to you about how it should be set up. Yeah, and I've worked for FTSE 100 companies, and so many of them get this wrong. It should be a vision statement that's a long-term goal, and that should be almost ridiculous. That if you share that with your team, they should be looking at you thinking, "Really? What are you? Have you been drinking? Are you on drugs?" The more ridiculous the vision statement, the better. Then underneath that, the second layer is having a very clear mission statement. So, for example, in Boss Pizza, we've got a very simple mission statement, And that is one that the staff understand. You've got to deliver the best tasting pizza and deliver it to the customer as fast as possible. Do you understand that? And the staff are like, yeah, that's pretty clear. We understand that. So that's our mission statement. Then underneath that are the core values. That's all of the culture and behavior. And ours are here right up in the wall beside me here. It's quality pizzas, it's customer delight, it's teamwork, responsibility. And the last one is unashamedly is profit. We're in business to make a profit.
Absolutely. I think that's a good one to think about as well, because look, you know, I've interviewed many franchisors and heard many founder stories, and you know, there's a lot of talk about, you know, passion and, you know, why someone wants to be within a certain brand, you know, what they want to do, why they did it, all of these sorts of things. But look, we're in business here, you know, and franchising, like any business, you need to make profit, you know, and it's good to hear that that's one of the values, because that's why people are doing this. You know, they're doing the business to make profit, aren't they?
And that's why I said unashamedly, one of our core values is to make profit. And the reason I've got that as a core value is because it's harder and harder to make a profit in today's economic climate. So that is something that businesses cannot afford to ignore.
No, absolutely. I mean, look, I think you're in a business here that is, how can I say it? I think you're in a good business, a good position to be able to make a profit. You know, pizza has you know, always been something that you can make a good profit from. You know, and you know, that's great. It's great that is. Was that one of the reasons you chose pizza, do you think? Because it's got that good profitability in there?
It's good profit margins. It's very simple to do. And my family had been working with dough for the past 40 years. So we're dough experts. We used to knead dough. We used to ferment it without any yeast. So we've been working with dough for naan breads, chapatis for 40 plus years. So we know the behavior of dough. So it's exactly the same dough. The only difference is you put the sauce on top and you make a pizza instead of like naan bread or chapatis or something.
Yeah, absolutely. We have got quite a few people here live. There is a slight issue with Restream, so we can't put these comments up on the screen, but I have other ways of getting to these comments. So first of all, let's welcome the fantastic Simon Wise with us. Simon has put, hello, franchise friends. It's great to have you with us, Simon. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts on why franchising is difficult and how we can get around that and how we can make it easier for people. So great to have you with us, Simon. We also have the fantastic Leslie Flowers with us. Leslie is joining us all the way from America, and she's put hello to Harvey and Ajmal. Great to have you with us, Leslie. Leslie is the host of a LinkedIn Live all about the book Think and Grow Rich. So join her on Fridays for that. Let's have a look. Let's put up a comment here from Tim Morris, one of our fantastic supporters at the bridge. And he's put, evening franchise buddies, it's good to be here. Well, it's great to have you here, Tim. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts. Pop any questions. You know, Tim is all about supporting franchisees and trying to make that journey easier. So I'm sure there's other avenues and other aspects that make it a little bit tricky. So do let us know your thoughts. We also have the fantastic Penny Hopkinson with us. Penny is, of course, one of our lovely supporters. And she is leveraging AI and operations manual with her fantastic Manual Magic AI platform, which hopefully will help everybody make their manuals a little bit less difficult. But great to have you with us, Penny. We've got a couple of other people that I want to recognize and introduce. We've got Johnny Joseph here. Johnny is from Los Angeles, and he is a franchise auditor. Great to have you with us. He put hi from a sunny but cool Los Angeles. Well, it's always fantastic to have you with us, Johnny. Thanks for taking the time to be with us today. We've got a couple of questions, one from Simon, one coming up from Johnny. But before we get to those, let's also welcome the fantastic Darren Adair to the show. Darren is a regular to the show. Great to have you with us. And he is the host of Restaurants Roundtable and the Great Mind Sessions. So fantastic to have you with us. Please give us your thoughts on why franchising is difficult and what we can do about it. And we will hopefully get to those. Let's have a look at a question here from Simon. So Simon has put, does simplicity deliver strong margins in the sector that is under pressure from rising utility and labor costs? Look, I love this. You know, we've spoken here a little bit about profit, and we've spoken a lot about a simple model. Lots of people talk about turnover. Lots of people talk about EBITDA. But look, you know, in the end, it's what you're making from the business. You know, how you're going to then return the investment you put into that business. And do you think that simplicity helps deliver those margins, that profitability?
100%. And you mentioned something there that I consider a bad word, EBITDA. There's only, I've been running businesses for a long time now, and I've done okay. There's only two figures that I look at: top line sales, the gross sales, and the net profit margins. That's the only two figures that I look at, and anything else within that, I think, for me, is a waste of time. So again, keep things nice and simple. Operationally, if you keep things simple, the staffing cost is simple, the training cost is simple, the cost of replacement is simple. So all of those head down to the bottom line net profit, and that's what I focus on: net profit and gross sales. That's the only two things I look at.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, you know, net profit, that's the one. I mean, look, you know, if you're in business, you should understand what net profit means. And that's what you should be focusing on, because that is what is returning that investment. There's no good talking about turnover. You know, there was an old adage about that, wasn't there? Turnover's vanity, something like that. I can't remember how it went now, but
and here's another way that here's another tool that I use to maximize my scrutiny of the profits of the business. And that is, you bring the cycle down, not annually. You don't do the calculations quarterly like a lot of big companies, not even monthly. You focus on the weekly sales, on the weekly profit. Now, imagine, like, I've worked for big companies, FTSE 100 companies. They do things by the quarter. Now, they're huge, so they've got to. But imagine you have 13 weeks that aren't great. By the time you get your report, you're into the 14th week. That you've lost weeks and weeks of potential remedies for whatever solution, for whatever is causing the problem. So one of the things that I've always done is focus on the weekly sales and the weekly net profit. You've got your finger on the pulse. If anything is going wrong, you know about it there and then, and you can fix it.
That's a really, really, really important thing to say. And I think you're right. I think particularly as businesses get bigger, you know, they start looking at their annual figures or their quarterly targets. And like you say, a quarter of a year is a long time in business. That's a quarter of a year that you've been paying rent. That's a quarter of a year that you've been, you know, paying staff. And if things aren't looking right, you know, like you say, you're in the 14th week before you can start putting that right. So I think that is absolutely fantastic advice and a great way of keeping things simple. You know, brilliant question, Simon. Love that. I think it's worth actually picking out another thing that Simon said there, and about utilities and labor costs as well. You know, it's absolutely on everyone's agenda that these costs are going up. You know, I've been in the sort of the restaurant sector and the QSR sector for a number of years. You know, you always used to look at sort of, if 100% is all of your money coming in, you then look at some of those costs as a percentage of that 100%. You know, and you know, staffing is a good one. You know, I've heard that anywhere between sort of 27 and 37% as a percentage coming out of that 100%. You know, and same with utilities. And it's tough. You know, you want to look after your people. Your people are your business. Your franchisees are your business. Your staff are your business. Your customers. It's all about people. But how do you negate some of that? You know, is it just about streamlining, keeping it simple again? You know?
Yeah, we've got a very simple formula. Our resource cost should not exceed 25% net of sales. So, for example, just using round numbers, if you do £10,000 turnover in your business per week, the net salary should be no more than 2,500.
Okay.
And again, if you look at, you need to drive efficiencies into your business. So instead of, like in the past, we used to have people on for 6 hours from 4 o'clock to 10 o'clock. Now it's 4 o'clock to 8:30. So even shaving off that 1.5 hours helps you maintain those targets of 25%. You just get rid of all of the extra resource allocation and just make sure you're running a really tight ship. And I know people might think, well, that's not great practice. We have to make a profit in the business. And I would rather run the business this way than have a business that's not making a profit. The wheels come off and you end up closing.
Absolutely. I think you've got it there. It's hard because in one way you're saying, well, look, you know, staff are going to get less hours here, right? But like you say, you've got to protect the business, because if you don't protect the business and the business isn't making money and isn't being successful, the business can close. If the business closes, they don't reduce their hours, they haven't got any hours. So it's really important to protect the model, whatever you've got to do, you know, and you can look at those sales and see when you should be open and when you shouldn't.
Exactly. And in fact, that's a really good point. In my previous business, we used to close for 2 days. We used to open at 4:30 and close at 10 o'clock for the rest of the week. 27 and a half hours. That was the busiest business I've ever seen. That was my business. And I had a saying that day, if you can make money, you'll make money in this much time. If you're not making money, you could be there 24 hours a day and you won't be making money. So it's better to do, in my opinion, for that business, it was better to do a slightly less compressed hours, but just pour all of your energy into those limited hours. And my staff, I was the only restaurant takeaway business that I knew of where I would give my team 2 days off. We would be closed on Mondays and Tuesdays. And when the team arrived on Wednesday, everyone's fired up, waiting to go.
Yeah. And look, I've worked in, you know, in my early career, I studied to be a chef and I was a waiter and I worked in all sorts of roles, right? And look, there's something of a buzz in hospitality, in QSR when it's busy. It's hard work. But you talk to most people that have done those types of roles, when it's busy and you'll find, and I don't know if you find this, but if you go into any food business when it's busy, you generally get served quicker. Like everyone's on this, like you say, there's a buzz, there's a high about it, you know, and therefore keeping people energized and within that really sort of busy feel is really important. We've got a few more questions come in here. We've got one here from Tim. Sorry we can't put these up, but we're talking about them and they're absolutely part of our conversation. So Tim's put, what difficulties have you found rolling out the franchise model? This is a good question, actually, because you're clearly, I mean, it comes across in every ounce of your being how passionate you are about your business, right? You know, it's something you've founded. You know, you've got this vision, this direction, right? You're instilling that in everyone around you. But as you grow, as you bring on more people, as you bring on franchisees, how do you sort of get that instilled in them, and what difficulties have you found? Does it ever dilute?
Yes, I'm glad. That's a great question, and I'm going to be as blunt as it can be, in the franchising business, people talk shit.
Yeah.
And I've experienced that. So we've had franchisees that gave us the big talk. They've worked for the biggest brands, and they've got millions of pounds worth of funding. They've got this, they've got that. And then when it comes to the crunch, they couldn't even open a single shop. So we actually had a shop, and I'm not going to mention the location of it. We had a shop almost up and running. The two partners had a fallout with one another, and the shop never opened. And in the early days, we were very excited hearing all these big names, these big multinational names that you've worked for and you've done consulting for. And then we naturally get very excited because we're just a young, new brand. And my God, you've got so much experience. And then we had another franchisee, again, name dropping, big names. And then it turned out he's failed, like business after business after business. He's failed. He's then taken on a Boss Pizza, and that's also failed.
Nice.
So people talk shit. And now the one thing we're very, very
Ajmal seems to have disappeared there. Let's see if we can get him back.
Yep, I'm back.
If you have just joined us, this is the Franchise Show, and today we are talking about why franchising is so difficult.
Yep.
Ajmal has shared some fascinating insights with us today. It's been a real pleasure to have him on, and we were just hearing a little bit of the difficulties that he's rolling that out. So please continue.
So again, we had another franchisee. They're again name dropping. They've got this, they've got that. Took on a Boss Pizza franchise. It failed. It turned out he's actually failed in 3 other businesses, and the practices that he's been using, we're not surprised that even the Boss Pizza brand has failed under his leadership. So now, if you want a Boss Pizza franchise, the answer is no. You cannot have one. You need to prove to us that you are capable, you've got the finances, you've got the experience, you've got the right team. Now we drill down so deep before we even offer a franchise.
Yeah, look, I think you've made a very valid point. I think not only should franchisors drill deep into whether a prospective franchisee is right for them and for the business, it should be the other way around as well.
Yeah.
If you're a franchisee listening to this and you're considering Boss Pizza, any franchise, right? If you're considering doing that, do your research, do it really thoroughly first, you know, and tell your franchisor everything about you. Franchisor needs to tell everything about the business, the good and the bad, the easy and the hard.
Yeah.
Right? If you can have that transparency and have that open conversation, then it's better for both sides.
Exactly.
You know, and you'll grow better. It's very tempting as a franchisor. You know, you're trying to grow your business. You want to get franchisees into your business. And look, it's too tempting if someone's got the money and they seem keen to say, welcome to the team, here's a site. But you talked earlier about having a strong foundation. You know, you've got great aspirations for growth, and I have no doubt that you're going to achieve them. But, you know, to make sure the right franchisees are in at the beginning is really, really important, because they're fueling that growth, aren't they?
Yeah. And we've made that mistake because we were new to the franchising world. We believed people, but thankfully we've had a couple of store closures. Now we've learned our lesson. We've flipped it. We're not selling franchises. Anyone in the franchising space, you should never sell a franchise. You should look to recruit franchisees. And ever since we've taken on that recruitment mentality, we're almost like interviewing the potential franchisees if they're good enough to come on board. And that has totally changed the game for us.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting as well. I've heard different expressions when a franchisee comes on board. You know, awarding a franchise is one of the expressions that I've heard, which is definitely alluding to what you're saying, that if they, you know, if they're right for the business, that, you know, they get awarded the chance to become a franchisee.
Yeah.
And look, that's not a power play. That's not, a franchisor being elitist about things. It's you saying we care enough about individuals to make a big effort to make sure they are right for the business.
Yeah, 100%. So I've had store closures in my network, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, right? I've just taken my brand, handed it over to someone else. They've messed it up. Now that's damaging my brand that I've worked the last 20 years to build up. So anyone thinking they've got a good little business they want to franchise it, understand that you're going to take your reputation and give it over to someone else. They may run with it and do really well, or they could totally mess up. That's a risk you've got to take.
Absolutely. I mean, how have you found the sort of the franchisee life cycle? Because I think this is really interesting. I think there's always a life cycle, however easy or difficult you've made that journey. And that life cycle tends to be very enthusiastic at the beginning, settling down to a degree. And then sometimes a franchisee thinking that, why do they need a franchise model anymore? They understand everything about this business. They could do this easily.
Right.
How do you sort of take them through that journey?
We have got a graph, a presentation. They start off, they're quite happy. Then when they've bought into it, they become really happy. And then just as a business launches, they get even happier. And then it dips a little bit when they realize, actually, this is a lot harder than we thought. And then they dip even further when they realize, bloody hell, this is not good. And it's at that low point that most franchisees just bail out or drop out. Not just franchisees, even business owners. But that pain point at the bottom, you've got to go through that. And they arrive at that usually within 6 months. You've got to go through that pain point, and then after that, your business increases and you become a success. And Harvey, I've ran 3 businesses in the past, and each time it's taken at least 18 months just to gain momentum. Nothing happens in the first year, no matter how great a businessman you are, no matter how great your franchise is, whatever it is. It just takes time for the consumers to adopt your brand. And that's why, in my experience, it takes at least 18 months to 2 years just to build the momentum.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're completely spot on that. It's setting that expectations. And when you talk there about you've got that graph and you take franchisees through it, and this is how you might feel. This is what might happen. Again, you're being transparent. You're setting it out that's maybe how they're going to feel. But they're going to feel like this, and this is what we might do. And I think it's a really important part of that journey. We've got a comment come in from Darren. He's put, simplicity isn't easy. Well said. I think absolutely. We've made this point. Today the topic was about why is franchising difficult.
Yeah.
Right? But simplicity it's hard, right? If you get something simple, if you take something that's 30 processes deep and you take it down to 3, and the end result is just as good. I mean, that's an exaggeration there to a degree. Yeah. But even when you're doing something like making a pizza, the process of making a pizza, if you can move where the tongs or where you put I'm really simplifying this, but I used to do a bit of work within QSRs and trying to make that sort of journey while you're making that. Just shave a second off here or make something easier there. Right. It improves things for the end customer because they get a pizza quicker or hotter. It improves things for the staff because they're not bumping into each other, and they've got a more enjoyable working environment. So simplicity.
I can tell you and the viewers exactly how to make your business as simple as possible. And I can say this with confidence because I actually implemented it. The best way to improve your business is not to arrive at your team, not to go to your team and say, all right, I need you, Harvey, to improve what you're doing by 100%. You're going to look at me and say, boss, you're talking rubbish on your bike. The way we did it in my previous business is I challenged the team. I said, can you do what you're doing? I just need you to improve what you're doing by 1% in the next week. And the team would be like, that's easy. Of course we can. So every week we just had this culture of continuous improvement, and see over a period of 18 months, my God, the business was unrecognizable. So anyone watching this, challenge your team to improve what they do by only 1%. It doesn't threaten anyone. It's easy to implement. And when they do it, challenge them again the following week. And very quickly, you'll see a major transformation in your business. And that's how we implemented such a simple system.
I love that. I love that because, again, you know, like you say, if you say we need something improved by 20%, people go, oh, well, that's a really difficult thing to do. How are we going to do that?
Yeah.
But if you take it 1% at a time,
yeah,
I suppose the only thing is, how do you, what sort of KPIs can you put on those improvements? But I suppose it depends on the department. It depends on what you're trying to improve. But the important message there is small incremental improvements can make a huge difference to the simplicity of
exactly.
Leslie Flowers has come back with clear, simple 4th grade level. Yeah, I mean, look, confirming again that making things clear, transparency, keeping things simple is so important to keeping franchising simple and not making it difficult.
Yeah.
We got a couple of comments coming up, one from Simon and one from Tim. Let's take Tim's comment now. Tim has put, how do you ensure you receive P&L statements from franchisees? Do you find franchisees are reluctant to provide the reports? Many people fear the numbers. Look, this is a good one to get into, and I think this is a good question actually, because look, I've experienced stories of franchisees in the past that really just don't understand the numbers at all. Maybe they look at how much is in the bank every now and again, but they just don't know if they're profitable. They don't want to share it. You know, they hide away from it because, you know, they find it difficult. What's your sort of approach to that? Is it very open?
And so we see all of the live sales data coming through our system. So we get a report every Monday morning, exactly what the sales are, the volumes are for each store. Then in terms of the profitability of each of the stores, we leave that to the franchisees because we don't get access to the rent, the rates, and we give them total control of managing the P&L of their own business.
Get it, absolutely. Let's go back to a comment here from Johnny. Johnny has put, please comment on my perception that Zors spend a lot of time and energy training Zs on their brand and processes, teaching them the system and the manual, but not enough on running the business, which makes franchising so difficult. I really like this actually, because this has this point about the fact that franchising, you've got this model, you can teach someone what's in your SOPs and your manual, but if they haven't got the basic fundamentals of business, of entrepreneurialism, they're harder to teach, aren't they?
Yeah, excellent point. At Boss Pizza, what we do is we don't only teach them at operational level in the store, I give them management training. There's 8 different courses that I put them through. That's about people management, about running the business, about profitability, about marketing, about how to just set up the business. There's so many different things that I cover off on the business, and they've got to go through that 8-hour course before they open the shop. Now, in the early days, we didn't give them the full course because some business owners maybe have got the experience, but now we just make it a blanket policy. You've got to be taught everything I know about business as part of the onboarding process.
I think that's really valuable. Really great question, Johnny, as well. Thanks for getting involved here. But I think it's a really valid point. And look, you've covered off that really well in your business, you know, to make sure that you're not just teaching someone SOPs and an ops manual. You know, you're teaching somebody a good way of running a business based on your wider experience of running businesses, not just this is how you operate a Boss Pizza franchise. It's more than that, isn't it?
Yeah,
absolutely. Let's have a look. We've got a comment coming in here from Simon. Let's have a look at this one. He put, which is why if you go into franchising well capitalized as a franchisor, you will not be pressured into making bad franchisee hires. Yes, absolutely. I get this one. So this refers back to, you know, when you were talking about selecting the right franchisees and resisting that urge to, if you've got 10 people who want to be franchisees. They're all ready to sign up, pay the franchise fees. They're ready to do it all. They want to open a shop, but they're not right. But you really want to do it, right? If you've got, as a franchisor, if you've got yourself in a position where you've got that capital and you can take your time and you don't have to make a decision based on your need to grow the business, your need for additional capital coming in. It's a very important point when you're looking at a franchise business, isn't it?
Very important point indeed. And we made that mistake in the early days. Beggars can't be choosers. When people came along, name dropped big corporate names, we naturally got excited. They're going to take our brand and they're going to open up shop here, there, everywhere, and they're going to do amazing. In the very early days, I think a lot of franchise brands make the same mistake. And I'll tell you now, unashamedly, out of the first 20 stores that we're going to open, I think 3, 4, 5 will fail because the franchise profile just isn't what's required to make it a success. Yeah. But that's the pain that every franchise business goes through, not just Boss Pizza.
100%. Because look, it's a learning journey, you know, and I don't think there's any shame in saying that in fact, you should say you're continuing to learn and you're continuing to make mistakes. You've been very open today about making mistakes, about failure, right? And we learn a heck of a lot more from failure than we do success. You know, that's how we tweak things. That's how we make improvements. You know, failure is a good thing, you know, and I've often said this in the past that, you know, part of what you're paying for as a franchisee is you're paying for other people's mistakes. You know, that you've been through this, you've had the pain over the years of not making the right call, implementing the wrong system, doing things the wrong way. And look, that was up to the point where you then launched a franchise business, but then you're open to the fact that you're continuing to learn, you're continuing to improve. Yeah. And it's great to bring franchisees on that journey as well, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Well, we are starting to come towards the end of the first section of today's show. It's been a fantastic conversation. You know, great questions as always. Perhaps we could end, Ajmal, by talking about some of the, you know, without giving away too much, although I always love a franchise show exclusive, of course, but what's your sort of plans for the future, you know, and you're heading towards this big goal, you know, have you got some different things you're planning to do? You're going to put in a breakfast pizza, maybe something like that?
No, I'm very, as a person, I'm very boring. The only thing I do is focus on one business, and that's Boss Pizza. And then in my private life, I enjoy football. I do gym 3 times a week. I play badminton. I play snooker. I've got a young family, spend a lot of time with them. But from a professional point of view, I only do one thing, and I put all of my effort into it.
Amazing. So, I mean, what is where do you see Boss Pizza in 15 years' time? What is that vision? What is that dream?
In 15 years' time, I would like to see a Boss Pizza open in every major town and city across the country.
Wow. Okay, well, you heard it here. So we will, in 15 years, you're definitely coming back on and we're going to have the same conversation. We'll see where you're at. Fantastic. Well, we have now come to the end of the first part of today's show. As I say, thank you for you all being here. I'm sorry I couldn't put your comments up on the screen, but they drove our conversation. And they always do. This is a franchising community, and this is always a conversation between us all. And this show is what it is because of you being here and because of the questions you put in. I always start off with nothing written down. I'll often show the piece of paper with nothing written down, but I'll always end with some absolute gems. So I first of all want to, thank you all for being here with us live, putting in your comments and getting involved in the show today. And thank you to Ajmal for fantastic responses and conversations. So let's go to the final part of today's show. Now, this is the part where my screen will go black for a little bit, but that's not because things are broken. That's because you're not allowed to see me without me wearing a hat. Now, I've got an absolute beauty here. And this hat is made by the lovely Paul Murphy from PJ Murphy and Sons, bespoke British hatters. So if you want a hat like this, have a chat to Paul. Now, this is also the part of the show that's a little bit of fun, and we're going to stop talking about why franchising is difficult for a little bit, and we're going to find out a little bit about Ajmal. And he is going to get his chance to get his own back on me as well, so he can ask me a question. But let's start with a question for you, Ajmal. We're going to keep it fun, keep it light-hearted.
Okay.
Have you ever met anyone famous? Have you got a story behind that, or a claim to fame, or perhaps a crazy sport amongst all of those sports you list?
Fame, I've been around for a while. I've met quite a few people like Mary Berry, Paul Hollywood, some film actors, some singers. I think my business journey has allowed me to go to a lot of black tie events where you meet celebrities, etc. So yeah, there's quite a few there.
When you met Paul Hollywood, is that because you are an avid baker on the side? Were you doing some baking?
I was cooking at the BBC Good Food Show probably about 8 years ago. So I met him in the green room, as well as Mary Berry, the Hairy Bikers. So all of the Tom Kerridge, all of the TV chefs, they would congregate at the BBC Good Food Show in Scotland once a year, and I would be cooking there as well, and that's where I would meet them.
Amazing. I mean, did you always have a passion for cooking? Is that why, you know, you've got a food brand now?
Oh yeah. I mean, I cook all day, every day. That's all I do. Just dream about food, talk about food, cook food. I used to work in London as a management consultant, and every weekend I used to have cooking parties at my house.
Oh, wow, cool.
And I would invite friends round and show them how to cook. So it's just something I love.
Oh, amazing. I suppose I need to ask you this question. What is your favorite pizza topping? Don't normally ask people this one, but I think it's appropriate. Which one do you like?
Again, very straightforward, quite boring. I just like spicy chicken.
Nice. Good one.
Nice and flavors.
And look, while we're still on pizza, how do you feel about pineapple being involved?
I like pineapple pizza. I think it gets pineapple and pizza is okay.
There you go. You heard it here. That's going to be a controversial one, I'm sure. Yeah. Well, look, I promise you could get your own back on me because you've asked all of these, answered all of these questions beautifully today. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you. You can now ask me anything you like, and I don't know what's coming. So
why are you wearing a hat?
Well,
why did you go blank? Why did the screen go blank when you were changing your hat?
Because you're not allowed to see me without wearing a hat.
Is that because your hair is so beautiful, or you don't have any hair? Give us a sneak peek. What's behind the hat? What's under the hat?
Well, that's it. That's the thing. No one can find out what's under the hat. I mean, I've shared the story behind the hat before, and look, I will share it again, perhaps with a slightly different slant. But when I first started doing this, I was nervous about it. And look, there was something about the character of wearing a hat that gave some sort of, I don't know, some sort of protection. I've shared the wider story about the hat.
Okay.
And look, then it's stuck. You know, I then started to be known as the chap who talks about franchising and wears a hat. And I could either not wear it or embrace it. And I think everyone knows what I chose. You spoke about black tie events. I've been to several whilst wearing a tuxedo and a hat.
Wow. Okay.
So there you go. I love my hats now, and I think I'll always be wearing one. But yeah.
And how much does a hat like that cost? Because that's something I've never bought. The only thing I've bought is a woolly beanie to keep the head warm. So how much does a hat like that cost, for example?
Well, I mean, the hat I bought originally, the one I wear at the beginning, cost me £24.99. I will say that. So, you know, that wasn't an expensive one. I mean, hats can be, you know, £1,500, £2,000, but Paul does an incredibly good value service, a fraction of that cost, and absolutely beautifully and handmade as well. So, yeah, absolutely. Have a chat to Paul if you want one of these hats. I'll see you wearing one next time. Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. Look, we have now come to the end of the show, so that just leaves me first of all to thank everyone who has been here live with us, who has put in their comments, You really are what makes this show special. So thanks very much for being here. And a big thank you to Ajmal for taking your time this evening to be with us. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thanks so much for being on the show. And next week, next Tuesday, we will be talking about QSR franchise manuals made easy with the lovely Penny Hopkinson and Andrew Emerson, who was at Domino's and Millie's Cookies. So we'll be talking pizzas again. But it'll be a fantastic episode. Please join us for that. That will be next Tuesday at 5:15 GMT, 12:15 EST. So until next time,